Hey guys, I'm Learning TFT, back with another video where I'm sharing my research process with you so that I can learn more effectively and you can benefit in the process. In this video, we're going to go through the best 1421B reroll carry items. So reroll is back, it's back in the meta. There are a lot more reroll lines available now. It's not just about 4 costs like it has been in the last patch. And so I wanted to do a deep dive into the best items that these 3-star reroll lines want to take. Now, keep in mind that this is 1 day's worth of data. So I filtered Diamond Plus, and I was considering both the build and individual item stats because sometimes items synergize well with each other. So items that are good statistically individually may not be the best from a 3-item carry standpoint. And the other thing is that this is all very inexact. Because of that, the sample size is low, especially for artifacts and radiant items. And oftentimes it's just better to slam items than greed be it best in slot, especially because you have item removers. So it's usually best to just slam whatever it is that can be good on those carries, because that will let you preserve HP in the early game, which will let you generate gold, which will allow you to be able to hit your 3 stars before dying. And hopefully later on, you can then build the best in slot items with using the item removers on late game carousels if you happen to get the best items later. So that's one caveat I want to really hammer home, is this is more so useful as a guide to see what's generally good for these units. I highly recommend you do not greed best in slot for most of the time. There are rare instances, like for example, Jinx really needs a Rage Blade to work. So that's like, okay, you need to make sure you have Rage Blade eventually. But for many of these units, that is not going to be the case. The other thing I want to talk about from a methodology standpoint is, for example, Warwick with 3 Rage Blades. This is going to be with the augment, what was it? The prismatic augment anger issues. Like that's going to skew the data. So again, this is why it's inexact. And like Rage Blade's very good on Warwick, but like if you look at the stats, 1 Rage Blade here is going to be lower than like Titans, for example, or 2nd or 3rd Rage Blades. So that's what I mean when I say that these stats are inexact. But they're still useful to give us a high level kind of guideline about how we should operate with these items. The other thing that I put here is you can use this as a guide here, average place, top 4 rate, and win rate. So this is average place, top 4 rate, and win rate. And I've sorted these by average place in each of these cost categories. So we'll just kind of walk through these. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to kind of call out high level impact items. And so Zap Attack, blitzcrank becomes kind of a damage tank carry, which is why Crown Guard is especially good on blitzcrank. BT can be useful too because he is dishing out a lot of damage, especially if you get more honey in. So the healing and the shielding on Vanguard can be particularly good. Solo frontline with Stoneplate is good. He's very great with a lot of artifacts. By the way, I don't have these sorted necessarily by like what's highest in each category. And the way I have them sorted is kind of by place change and relative item differential. So like some of these, they're all going to be, some of them are going to be above 4.0 anyway. But like B usually means that it's not necessarily giving you a higher placement than this 4.0 average. So Forbidden Idol is really good, helps blitzcrank heal a lot, or sorry, Innervating Lock is what helps him heal a lot. Forbidden Idol gives him a lot more HP and is the best artifact by a lot. And Radiant Stoneplate is particularly good, just basically makes him unkillable. If you can combine a Radiant Stoneplate with the Innervating Locket, like you basically win the game. So yeah, again, these are all slammable items, especially early, but ideally late game, you want to try to get these. But if you can hit an early Blitz 3 because you're tempoing and you're streaking, you can win the game slamming A and B items. Next, we have high horsepower Lillia 3. By the way, I'm going to include in the description links to all of these tier lists, so you can reference them in the description yourself. So high horsepower Lillia makes her also a damage carry / tank. So these are all very good on her. She just wants AP and survivability. So like BT Archangel is good, Titans is very good, Zhonya's Radiant BT, all very strong. And this line is now played with the old ahri line. Ziggs will be played with your blitzcrank. Can be played with zap attack blitzcrank or just with a honey reroll, though that's not as strong unless you have certain augments. And I talked about that in my spreadsheet yesterday on the kind of best comp so far in 1421B. So Ziggs is very flexible. You can do a lot of stuff across the board. You'll notice that both Ziggs and blitzcrank are really good with lots of artifacts. So if you can take What the Forge, especially if you're on a portal with a lot of items, that can be very strong. And or if you happen to take Buried Treasures, the prismatic, on 2-1 and have a lot of items and go into What the Forge later, can be very strong. So I don't really have anything to call out on Ziggs. He's just super flexible and you can play him in a lot of different items. Warwick was the Corrupt Vampiric Scepter was removed in 1421, but is still playable from lots of different artifacts here, you'll see, and especially radiant items. So if you can hit one of these artifacts or radiant items, he is still quite playable. And even if you don't have artifact or radiant item, you can still go for a solid top 4 with these items here. He does have some healing built into his kit, so BT or Hodge are not necessary, though they can help, which is why like Wit's End is still quite good here. Or if you can get like Row Rejuvenation or some type of healing augment, that can be good. Witchy Wallop Poppy is back, also played with ahri. It performs a lot worse than high horsepower Lillia, though if you can get a Silver Mirror Dawn on Poppy, or basically any of these makes Poppy like super strong. Otherwise, if you're just going kind of like these items, Poppy's not going to be as good. Though if you hit Poppy 3 way ahead of tempo, it can still be quite strong. I've also seen some top challenger players play both the Lillia and the Poppy line, not with ahri, but if you are able to hit it early and then tempo to try to go fast 9 and happen to hit a Bastion emblem along the way on your 3-2 or 4-2 augments, then you can go fast 9. Usually this will be on 3-2 if you hit a Bastion emblem, or if you're playing on a trainer golem and you happen to hit a Bastion emblem, then you can go fast 9 and go 8 Bastion. And 8 Bastion with either Lillia or Poppy, they become unkillable, and then you can have some type of scaling backline like Rise, Callista, Zerath, or Milio, and you want like Rageblade or Archangel depending on what the unit is to get that scaling, because with 8 Bastion your backline is invulnerable until 4 of your frontline gets killed. So that has a very high win potential. Deja Vu Galio is back and is especially strong now. So it has a 3.9 average because all the other top tier comps were nerfed and Galio was untouched. So Galio wants to scale with Rageblade because Deja Vu gives him, I think, attack speed and AP. I could be wrong about that. It gives him some type of scaling with every attack that he has. So you want Rageblade, Gunblade, some type of survivability and healing, which is why BT and Hodge are here too, and Wit's End, because there's a lot of backline access, like you know, Rise or Callista if they're same side, or you have a Briar jump to the back, a Fiora. Some type of survivability, especially since he has Vanguard, he has the shield, so he's not going to die right away and can heal back up. You just need to make sure that he does have some type of survivability against other players who have backline access. Gambler's Blade can be strong because it gives attack speed and gives you the gold you need to be able to hit your Galio 3 ahead of tempo. And you can see that there's a lot of different artifacts that work really well with Deja. Galio. Fish bones can be pretty funny, like just hitting backline and sniping the enemy, especially if you can get the augment, I forget what it's called, where you get both the fish bones and the sniper's focus, which traditionally has been played with Varus, but with Galio, that is extremely strong combination. And very good with Radiant items. Ahri is back after a buff in 1421. Can be played with either of these hero augments, Lillia and Poppy, or it could just be played standalone if you happen to hit ahead of tempo. Ahri wants a lot of mana items because she gets more and more of the Foxfire things that surround her with every cast. And so she's a scaling AP champion. So the more mana you have on her, the better, which is why Mana Zane's great. Blue buff is good because she has low mana cost. Morello is actually quite good because she hits nearby enemies with the Foxfire. Same thing with Static Shiv. Just being able to hit multiple enemies. And her itemization is also very flexible across the board. Syndra is back as well. She was she was buffed. Eldritch was buffed and Neela was buffed. So you can reroll Syndra with Neela, though Syndra is going to be your primary carry. And with Syndra, her itemization is not what it was in the, what was it, first or second patch of this set, which was heavily attack speed skewed. They changed her kit in a previous patch so that she's more mana based. The cast animation is longer. And so you want a lot of mana items. What I've seen, I haven't really played much of Syndra, but what I've seen work from other players or heard from other players is that you want to stack a lot of mana items in the early game so that you can get a lot of stacks, because she's a permanent scaling champion. Every 30 casts, her ability like gets upgraded. And so if you can stack like a Shojin adaptive blue buff early and get a ton of stacks, and then later in the game, I forget where the cutoff is, let's just say like over 120 stacks or 90 to 120 stacks, you can start, and I think that could probably be around stage 4 or 5, you can then start using the item remover to move off of like a 2 or 3 mana gen items into more AP like Jewel Gauntlet Rabadons. And that way you have a lot of stacks, which your ability is upgraded a lot. And then you could just move those items, those mana items, over to a secondary carry in the form of Karma or Nami. Or if you had adaptive, then you could just move it to like a frontliner, especially if you're able to hit a Syndra 3 and let's say a Mordekaiser 3, that's your win condition. So adaptive is very flexible in that you can just move it to a frontliner later. And she's also very good with all of these artifacts. Kassadin 3 is not as strong, like the weakest of these 2 costs, though if you hit ahead of tempo, it can still be very strong. I just played a Stars Are Born game where I hit an early Jax 3, which held the items for Kassadin, and then I hit it like, because I think it was on the portal where you get the 2-star 1 cost, and I already had like 2 other Jaxes. So I was able to hit with Stars Are Born Jax 3 pretty quickly, and I had Jax 3 hold the Kassadin items, and then once I hit Cast 3, then I could just move it over. And then later you can also try to hit hecarim 3, which we'll talk about in a sec. And you want Press the Attack, which really gives you a high cap out there. But Kassadin can still be a very strong carry if you can hit ahead of tempo. Very good with a lot of different artifacts. Is an AP melee carry, so all of these are quite good. Yep. So now we move on to the 3 costs. Hecarim is the highest performing 3 cost, and with Kalista being nerfed, there are probably fewer Kalista players running around now, which means there will be fewer Hecarim taken out of the pool. Also, TK Arcana was nerfed, so hopefully there are fewer Hecarim Arcana players as well, which makes Hecarim, especially if you go for Kassadin and Hecarim 3, a lot more viable. And particularly if you have Silver Mirror Dawn is absolutely broken on Hecarim. If you get that, you could just play straight for Hecarim 3. He's a melee carry, so just all of these standard items are good. You can itemize with some of these and then just like move them over with item removers over to Kassadin later. So the itemization is quite flexible. And of course, with both Kassadin and Hecarim 3, you eventually want to cap out with 7 multi-striker. And by the way, Rage Blade isn't like one of Kassadin's best items, though for multis, the anger issues is also very good, just like it was for Warwick, and it kind of skewed the data for Rage Blade. But you can put Rage Blade on Kassadin early and then transfer it over to Kalista 2 later. So again, you don't need to just think about slamming these items, especially with multis. It's very flexible since you can play around multiple carries. Jax 3, Kassadin 3, Hecarim 3. If you hit Akali 3, you can play towards that. And also Kalista 2 can hold items. Plus, if you hit your Camille 2 in the late game as your cap out, you can also move items over. So many of these items like Edge of Night, QSS, Hodge, Gunblade are all very flexibly slammed for the multi-line. Jinx, we've seen in the past, is still very strong. All of these are good. Gold Collector, I want to call out specifically, is very strong, especially if you can combine Gold Collector with Runons, which is because Runons already benefits hunters, since if you get a takedown with the extra arrow, it boosts the hunter's AD for a period of time. And then the Runons can also proc the Gold Collector. So if you have all 3 of these items together, that's very good. And Jinx 3, you play with Wukong 3, you need a lot of gold to hit. So Gold Collector lets you hit, especially if you can hit like early Jinx 2 with a solid frontline, you can farm a ton of gold, and that's like your easiest top 4, maybe easy top 1 if you can hit ahead of tempo and just generate a ton of gold. Vex 3, Mage reroll is still very solid. Lots of artifacts are good here. Vanguard is also quite good on Vex, particularly if you can get, since TK with Arcana and Xerath cap for Veigar is very good. So if you can get like a 4 Vanguard going, or even just 2 Vanguard, you toss it in. I didn't actually look at the stats, but I suspect 4 Vanguard is going to be a lot better. And just gives them a lot of extra shielding and survivability. And yeah, all of these are quite good on Vex. Ezreal 3, one thing you'll notice here in the stats, Ezreal 3, 3.5, 71, 17, just performs all around better than hwei 3. Last patch, hwei was played with the Vanguards and Arcana TK, which is not as good now. It was nerfed in a lot of different ways, especially the Arcana TK HP nerf. And I talked about that in my last video. So now when you play Blasters, you want to play around 4 Blasters since that was buffed. And Ezreal appears to be your primary carry instead of hwei. Ezreal, just like Jinx, is very good with Gold Collector, especially since you're trying to hit Ezreal, hwei, and Mordekaiser 3. Oh, I forgot to include Mordekaiser in this analysis, but I believe Mordekaiser is very good with Crown Guard, particularly, and probably Stoneplate. But yeah, this just gives you the Gold Collector, gives you the gold you need to be able to hit all of those 3 cost 3 stars. I.e. Last Whisper Shojin, very good. Similar to Varus itemization since he's a caster. And the other thing is, if you hit ahead of tempo and you just happen to have like a BT, because that's just what allows you to slam items, you can do the frontline Ezreal tech where You have BT, IE, Hodge, and you could just solo frontline Ezreal, or you don't have to solo him either. But the basic idea is that he takes aggro in the beginning, which lets him generate more mana. He jumps back to the back line, casts, deals a ton of damage, and heals that full back up. So that allows him to just cast faster and dish out more damage earlier. The one exception to wanting to do that is if you don't want to solo frontline him if you're playing against a Veigar 3, because the Veigar might just be able to burst Ezreal down in like, one shot. So yeah, Ezreal 3, very good. Wukong 3 played with Jinx 3, very good with artifacts. You want Stoneplate, Radiant items, very good. And yeah, for the most part, you want Stoneplate. This is Wukong 3 filtered without Spin to Win. Wukong 3 with Spin to Win, the itemization changes slightly because he deals a lot more damage and has scaling. Bloodthirster is very good. Radiant Bloodthirster, and actually Hunter Emblem, because his ability scales with AD. So that extra damage can be quite strong. But don't do this with just a non-spin to win Wukong 3. It's not very good. I've tried that before. He just dies very fast. And if you do the Hunter Emblem for more damage, you probably want to really make sure you have BT for the healing. Otherwise, his survivability just goes down a lot. Veigar 3. Oh, I should have been opening this up more. Well, I guess you can't really see it as much. Okay, so pretty flexible itemization. You just want him to cast more. He gets a lot of AP from both. Well, if he can get to 7 mage, the 7 mage was nerfed a little bit. But he gets a lot of AP from his ability. You want to make sure you buy in basically stage 4 and later. You just want to kind of slow roll, buy charm every round. So you're boosting his AP. And then late game, you want to be able to cap around the Xerath Arcana. And yeah, his itemization is pretty straightforward. Blue buff is his best mana generation item because he already has low mana. You pair blue buff with Nashers, makes him attack faster, be able to cast more. Very good with these artifacts. And hwei 3, very flexible itemization. At this point, it seems like you want itemized Ezreal over hwei. And yeah, as a secondary carry, probably good Morello holder. Very flexible on the artifacts as well. Cool, so that covers all of the main reroll lines that are very strong right now. It seems like it is a reroll meta, so one other thing to consider is if you are angling towards a reroll line, it makes it a lot easier to hit if you notice that other players are also going reroll, especially at the 3 cost level. There are not as many reroll lines at 2 costs, but at 3 costs, you could see you could go Jinx Wukong, you can go Ezreal hwei Blasters, you can go Veigar Vex Mage, and hecarim. And so if you see that there's a bunch of other 3 cost reroll players, it makes it much more likely that you'll be able to hit since they're taking all the other 3 costs out of the pool. So that's something to make sure you're scouting actively on. And if there are those other 3 cost 3-star reroll players, just join the party. So anytime there's a reroll meta, if you're the only one going 4 costs, you're probably going to pay the price when everybody else is able to hit because they're all taking the other 3 costs out of the pool. Same thing with like if you see someone playing a deja vu galio and someone's playing a kassadin 3, someone's playing ahri 3, well then syndra 3 just became a lot easier, and basically everyone who's re-rolling their AVPs should go down as a result of that. And lastly, once again, do not slam all of these BIS items. Like, just slam what's good enough, because what's more important is that you preserve HP, you generate gold, and you're able to hit ahead of tempo. If you are trying to greed your perfect items and you lose a ton of HP and you are not able to hit your 3 stars ahead of tempo, even after you hit and you get BIS, you will probably bleed out and die to the 1 or 2 high rollers in the lobby. So that's just not worth it. So BIS is fake. just slam. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have additional thoughts on what items I might have missed, analysis that I missed, any additional research that you think might be helpful that I could put together and share in these videos, please let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.